Happy 25th birthday to the first installment of one of the greatest off-road racing games ever created, ATV Offroad Fury. Estimated to be about the 20th best-selling video game on 6th-gen consoles between 2001 and 2006, sandwiching it between the likes of Ace Combat 4 and Jak and Daxter. 25 years later, of course in my own humble opinion, it still stands firm as a great, offline-only, no bells, no whistles, arcade off-road racing game. If you've never played, seen, or even heard of this game, hello, I'm New Metals, and I'll be your expert today. My credentials are, I've owned and played this game ever since I was a wee lad, and picked up speedrunning the game in my community college years, so I've had a lot of intimate time with this game, as well as the small community of players that play it and love it just as much as I do. The question I seek to take on is a conundrum that has plagued me for as long as I've been playing these games. Are these tracks real? Can I visit these places? Is it legal to drive here? Don't worry, those hard years in community college that I mentioned earlier weren't for nothing. I received a bachelor's degree in geography just so I can make this very video for an incredibly select and niche audience of about 70 people. If you're one of those 70 people, thank you for humoring me for the next however long, while we scour the globe to find where these tracks may actually be on Earth. For each track or environment, we're going to try and use anything that the developers gave us to try and equate the game's features to real-life features. Categorically, I have these under three general umbrellas. Human or human geography elements, which involves things like buildings, infrastructure, vehicles, signs, or anything else that only us humans with our grimy fingers could put together ourselves. The second umbrella will involve physical geography, utilizing things like flora, weather, and ground cover. The third, break glass in case of emergency category I'll need to utilize is the namesake of a track, which may give some hints in terms of any proper names we can find in the real world, as well as geographic context clues we can deduce from the name. While undergoing this project, I found that the game also gives its fair shares of limitations and restrictions. So, I have to make a few assumptions and guesstimates to make an okayish answer for some of the tracks and environments. Like, did you know that the skybox on all of the outdoor maps is mountainous? I try my best not to include this in my guess because we'd always end up somewhere in the mountains, which I just don't think is true for all of the maps. Brands displayed around the tracks will also generally be the same. I had the idea that maybe the accumulation of very common brands displayed around the track may give a hint on general brand locality, but most of these are national brands that weren't special or particular to any area. In Stadium Supercross maps, I'm unable to see outside of the stadium. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I'm also going to assume most of these places reside somewhere in North America. My reasoning for this is based generally on the namesakes used for many of the tracks and environments, as well as the brand names featured inside of the game. After all of that is considered, I'm going to try and pick a spot where it may be generally accepted to take an ATV if you had one. I don't know if this is for sure, obviously, but if you're planning on running a tour across all of these map locations, be sure to ask or check your local rules and regulations for that sort of thing. But before we dive in, let me tell you about this video's sponsor. Did I get you? Were you about to fast forward? There is no sponsor, okay? Well, there's kind of a sponsor, it's me, but it's my other free time hobby that I mostly function off of Instagram called Scene Lewis. All of the transition music you'll hear throughout this video comes from the punk, metal, emo, and rock scene in my hometown of St. Louis. So this is my obnoxious way to share music that I love from my hometown. I'll pop info in frame when a song comes on, and I'll compile them all up in the description so you can add all these bands to your Sunday morning walk playlist. And if you ever find yourself in the loo, follow my page and use my calendars to find yourself a show to go to. Thank you. Now let's head into our first track. For this incredibly specific challenge, we will be organizing our tracks starting with our northernmost latitudes and heading southward. And our northernmost track environment, and I think many would agree, would be Chateau Halifax. The name of this very snowy map enticed me to consider both Quebec because of the Chateau and Nova Scotia because of Halifax. But I immediately hit problems when searching these two places in Canada. Both Quebec and Nova Scotia are quite flat. This track features a very rugged ski slope and resort, which, to be fair, both of these Canadian provinces have, but not quite like the one featured in the game. And like I said before, as much as I'm drawn into using the namesake of the track, I need to do my due diligence and check out the geographies of this place first. Using hints from the landscape, I was brought to Alaska, which is a perfect way to explain how I efficiently narrowed down my search for the potential spot for these tracks. Being from the American Midwest, I've road tripped to a considerable part of my home country. Ocean City, Maryland, Devil's Tower, Wyoming, San Antonio, Texas, Tampa, Florida, and tons of places in between. But I've only still seen a small fraction of all the geographies of this country and our neighbors. That is where this United States Environmental Protection Agency's Ecoregions of North America guide comes in. While doing this challenge, I relied heavily on this EPA guide to lead me to general areas to search for, as close of a match to many of these tracks as I possibly could. And if you're a geography major map dork like me, this is like crack cocaine. There are subdivisions upon subdivisions upon subdivisions of defined ecoregions described in this thing, and I'm only going as deep as about the third level, which is probably a little bit too deep and too specific for ATV Offroad Fury, but I'm electing to do it anyway. I chopped through the beginning parts of their handy-dandy PDF that they have hosted online, and felt that it wasn't an Arctic
Cordillera
or a tundra, but the taiga region definitely felt correct. Specifically, the interior bottomlands of the Alaska boreal interior, I found to mimic the geography of the track the most. Then it just required searching for ski resorts in this area. My favorite of the bunch that I found is Skiland, found northeast of Fairbanks, and I'll lock this in as my real-world Chateau Halifax. For the next track, we probably do not have to go too far away, and the developers made this one a bit more obvious off the bat. Kodiak Pipeline, in the name alone, screams Alaska, although it wasn't a total slam dunk. The Trans-Alaska Pipeline is a huge pipe system that moves oil across Alaska, connecting the northern coast to the southern coast. Kodiak, but more broadly Kodiak Island, does not have this pipeline. Dang it. We can track the pipeline pretty easily with Google Maps and Earth imagery. So that's exactly what I did. I was looking for somewhere that had some extra infrastructure, not just the pipeline, but also mixed evergreen and deciduous trees that still had their leaves on them. And that was a very key point in narrowing down the ecoregion. And yes, I walked that pipeline via Google Maps the whole way from Prudhoe Bay to my eventual guess at the end location, Valdez, Alaska. Near here, there's a trail that goes by the name John Hunter Memorial, or Solomon Gulch, just a little bit away from the main part of Valdez. There's also oil-related infrastructure nearby. A quick note on some of the smaller details, because I am a slut for small details. And if you're watching a long-ass niche video like this one, you probably are too. The main structure in Kodiak Pipeline is a building labeled as PYPE. Pipe. Ha! Get it? You get it? Pipe? Anyway, I think this may actually be in reference to the Trans-Alaska Pipeline System, being short to TAPS. Also, the area seems to be well equipped with alternate modes of transportation that isn't just the ATV that rules this fantasy land. The map features snowmobiles and an in-motion medical helicopter just in case you absolutely smoke the exposed pipeline here. For our next location, you'll have to be sure to grab your passport. I think Manitoba Mills is my favorite track in the game, but I think it has a lot to do with there just being a lot of stuff in this map. This map features two businesses named LT Mills and Hilterbrand Paper, plus there are freshly cut logs, log loaders, and semi-trucks. It is clear to me that this is an illegal paper milling operation. The physical geography here, of course, covers a large forested area, prime for wood milling, and the terrain here is rolling, but not crazy steep anywhere. It may be important to note here that there really aren't any flat national or enduro tracks, just ones that are flatter than others. An interesting note is that all maps are assembled in a 9x9 grid in ATV Offroad Fury, as well as many of the maps in ATV Offroad Fury 2, with a few exceptions. There is also a very steep, dry moat built around the edge of each map, as well as an invisible boundary that, when hit, will eject you from your ATV and absolutely trebuchet you and your machine hard across the map. I'm electing to ignore these sorts of constants and just snapshot the meaningful parts of the tracks. And just like Kodiak Pipeline, everything is telling me to go right to the Canadian province Manitoba to go find where this track could be. Milling operations are not terribly hard to find on imagery provided by Google. Real geography dorks call that remote sensing, gathering information about location without coming into contact with it. So I began scouring Manitoba for big milling operations, and I finally landed on one of the closest matches that I could find. This is Canadian Craft Paper Industries in the Paw, Manitoba. We have reached our first enduro and freestyle environment, and probably the one with the least amount to look at and analyze, Harp Valley. Our major human-made features in this map include these large power transmission pylons and accompanying power lines which sadly do not lead anywhere, but they do intersect near the middle of the map at a substation which is pretty damn accurate to real life for an ATV game. There are also these large storage tanks as well as some sort of facility nearby that requires smokestacks, and a pipeline that looks a bit like the ones in Kodiak Pipeline that is used to connect these two facilities together. And lastly, the most stark and memorable feature is these girthier, rusty, abandoned pipelines that the player can ride along like it's a bobsled track at the Winter Olympics. But I'd bet my bottom dollar that you can't make jumps like this on a luge or a skeleton. The landscape in Harp Valley seems pretty arid, not like a desert, but close. There are absolutely no trees, but there are some bushes and grasses here and there. To me, this is the Great Plains, but the type of Great Plains where the focus is less on crop agriculture and more on open-range grazing and oil derricks. I have ventured into this area of the country just once in my life, but honestly, I was just a bit too young and it was a bit too long ago to remember. Using the criteria I had, I took the same route, I-94 west through South Dakota, and eventually landed at an area just outside of Medora, North Dakota. This small town in the Dakota Prairie grasslands wasn't my first choice. Nearby unincorporated Sully Springs appeared to have the industry infrastructure that I was looking for, but I couldn't find any good on-the-ground photos of the area, so I settled for Medora, just for confirmation's sake. Another relatively short trip to hit our next location. Badlands is a winding nationals track surrounded by chain link fences, wired lights, utility buildings, and plenty of 55-gallon steel drums. I can't find any conclusive evidence on what the utility building is used for, but it seems to be less for the actual meat and potato business going on in the area, and maybe a little bit more logistical or administrative. The surrounding areas are actually relatively flat for ATV Offroad Fury standards, and like Harp Valley, it's treeless, and there exists just some sporadically placed bushes and shrubs around the track. The obvious first place to look is Badlands National Park, which I have been to before. I have to be honest, this place does not look like the real-life Badlands at all. I will assume that the location is somewhere nearby where the terrain calms down a bit. I'm also looking for somewhere that is heavily influenced by oil. Using remote sensing via Google Earth, it didn't take me too long to find what I was looking for. On-land oil fields from satellite imagery kind of look like a terribly made connect the dots drawing. The connectors here being utility roads and the dots being oil pumps. The town of Baker, Montana had a gazillion of these, and it's situated in that same sort of geographic area as Harp Valley. Congratulations to Mitchell's Oilfield Services Incorporated, you are the lucky location of one of the ATV Offroad Fury's best maps. This next one was tough. Aside from the track's rolling grassy moguls and deciduous trees, there isn't much to really take note of in the form of human geography. There are canopy tents, loudspeakers mounted on poles, and advertisement signs which are indicative of your typical ATV Nationals competition. I took note that the area wasn't that flat because there are huge swaths of North America that sort of vaguely look like this. I really had to lean on the naming of the track to guide me to a general location. These are real backup strategies here. On Google Maps, the predictive search will try and guess what location you are trying to find as you're typing it. Using the term Sommer brought me a few results, one of which was to Somerset, Wisconsin, which sits very close to the St. Croix River, making up the Wisconsin-Minnesota border. Near this town was an area that I knew had to be my candidate for the real-life location for this track. This is Parnell Prairie Preserve Park, known as the Quad Ps to the locals, and I didn't just make that up. I did. Used for some light hiking and disc golf, I found that ATV racing could probably also take place here if they needed to venture into new avenues. The available imagery for this location made it very easy to select. I mean, just look at it. It comes with the track pre-installed. I think it's pretty cool and interesting that the first level, or in our case track, in a game is usually the one that any player of that game remembers the most. It's important for a developer to get it right because it sets the tone for the rest of the game. Presidio Park is the perfect, simple, no-frills map to introduce riders to the ATV Offroad Fury series. All of the trees here are evergreen, and we have some fairly rugged terrain when you leave the track area. Human implements here are things like camping tents, RVs, and most notably a fire lookout tower near the start-finish line. This place immediately screamed Pacific Northwest to me, but to confirm I referred to my eco-regions guide to help me guide my decision. I eventually found photos of the region known as the Idaho batholith. A batholith, for you non-volcanologists and non-geologists out there, is a fat chunk of granite that is cooked up and cooled in the Earth's crust. And these thick boulders get exposed by erosion over time, and I think that is exactly what we have here in Presidio Park. I eventually landed on Bear Basin Trail near McCall, Idaho as our real-life candidate. Our first and only track to take place at nighttime is Salem's Backlot. Lit by nothing but the moonlight, this track really doesn't offer much more in terms of geographic tells. The only real information we have here is that we have a mixture of deciduous and evergreen trees, but the ratio is leaning very deciduous. There's nothing at all here in terms of human geography, just the rider and the start-finish line. A lot like Sommer's Raceway, we're going to have to lean heavily on the track's given name, which probably was intended to be a real human's name rather than the name of a location. But what do you want me to do? Start looking through phone books?
Starts with an S. So swummy, slippy.
When I think of Salem, I think of Massachusetts, and that's exactly where I'm going to put this track. Yes, the real Salem is very populated, and not a whole lot to work with in terms of an area which you wouldn't be surprised to see an ATV. But you know who else was surprised? The witches. Here, I found a good spot. Check out Salem Woods Highland Park. Ample space to have a small, unlit, off-road racetrack. Just don't venture too far. It'll get ya. Attention passengers, our next stop is Yardley Station. What would a rainbow-made ATV Offroad Fury be without railroads and trains? Does this map cater to my special interests? Yes. Does this environment have one of the most interesting speedruns? Also yes.
Let's play football.
This environment, just like the other freestyle environments, has lots of stuff to gather data from. Our physical environment includes a hilly grassland and mixed deciduous and evergreen trees. And there are so many human-made things to check out in this map. We of course have our primary rail yard and our complete railroad circuit. The rail yard includes factories, coal loaders, grain elevators, and communication towers. Away from the rail yard, we find some farmsteads and homes under construction, so it seems we're developing our small hamlet into an economic powerhouse. There are a lot of clues here to help me narrow down to a general location. We're certainly dealing with a location with a history of agricultural output as well as access to coal. My head was saying western Pennsylvania, but my heart was taking me to Cincinnati, Ohio. I perused the city for a while looking for rail yards, and I finally landed on a rather inconspicuous one. This is Tate & Lyle's rail yard northeast of Cincinnati, Ohio. From what I understand, they are an international food and beverage company, and they must operate a small rail yard right here in Cincinnati. Notably to the south, we have some farmsteads, and to the north, a suburban neighborhood, which quenches both of those points of interest. Do you think there are a lot of hoops you'd have to jump through to get an off-roading event to take place here at an active rail yard?
Engines going on public roads must have their wheels covered and a cow catcher in front.
Fuck you, I don't do that,
said Thomas.
We now head back to much drier climates in the map Red Rocks. This triple crossover, what's the name of a figure 8 but you figure one more time? Figure 16? Anyway, this map has you flying over itself and navigating through rocky, hollowed terrain. Anyone who is familiar with American national parks likely already knows where this is. But calm down, let me do the checklist in the right order. We have nothing in the order of human-placed objects here, but our natural geography has some crumbly red rock formations, evergreen trees, and some small shrubs and bushes. Yes, we're likely in a map that is influenced heavily by Arches National Park in Moab, Utah, the second most popular American national park with an arch in it. I'm not sure if they would let you run an ATV competition out here in real life, but if they did, surely they'd have to let you drive underneath the arches. All in all, a pretty easy find. demos and trailers that came out before ATV Offroad Fury was released often focused on our next track, Lexington Trail. This track has one of my favorite structures in the entire game. Welcome to Kuntz's Hot Doggies. Brian Kuntz, lead artist on ATV Offroad Fury, has placed a hot dog stand right next to the start-finish line here. And have you ever seen a better looking glizzy? Aside from that, there isn't too much in terms of human-placed objects. Some canopy tents here and there, typical Nationals competition adverts, and track blocks. Our natural environment here is a hilly location with all deciduous trees. Just on vibes alone, this felt very generally Appalachian. Not deep, but maybe in the foothills. And while there are plenty of places named Lexington in the United States, I went to the Lexington that I'm most familiar with, and one that I think would match the geography fairly well. Lexington, Kentucky. The problem with Lexington is that it's fairly agricultural, like no tree agricultural, on all sides of Lexington. So I need to dive a little further away to find a natural geography that matches what we have in the game. I looked north on Interstate 75 between Lexington and Cincinnati to find the surrounding areas became a lot more tree-filled. I eventually found my place off of exit 144 for Owenton and Corinth, Kentucky, and that's where I've placed this fictional map. One might ask, where can I pick up a hot dog? Sunoco or the truck stop perhaps? Look, if you need a dedicated hot dog place, your exit is 159 for Dry Ridge at Noah's Hot Dogs. Do you mean Noah like Noah's Ark? Yes, because we're near the home of the real-life recreation of Noah's Ark. Try adding that to your map, Rainbow. The final track on the Maxis Nationals competition in-game is Tamarac Ranch. Typically we'd have a problem in places that do not have any human elements aside from the riders in the start-finish line, but this one is a lot like Red Rocks, in that the natural environment built here is enough to place this track on a real map somewhere. Our terrain is very rocky and sandy, and again, we meet some, I assume, naturally formed stone arches. For as dry and barren as this place seems, we still have plenty of vegetation in the form of a few bushes here and there, as well as some little cacti and some tall cacti. I have never been to any American desert in my life, so I was not entirely sure where to begin looking. The cartoon brain rot part of my brain was begging the question, do all deserts have cacti? And the correct answer to that question is no, not really. So I needed to find a rockier desert that had rock formations that formed these arches, not too dissimilar from Arches National Park in Moab, Utah. What is great is there actually exists a Wikipedia list of notable natural arches all over the world. Methodically, I could begin knocking out natural arches that were in greener parts of the country, and I finally landed on my spot. Sandwiched between Sequoia and Death Valley National Parks is the Alabama Hills, just on the outskirts of Lone Pine, California. Misleading, I know, and the thing is not as big as the arch in the game, but it's good enough for our purposes. This is the Eye of Alabama Hills Arch, and heck, these two formations could be twins. This will be our representative spot for Tamarac Ranch. Next, let's carve our way to the ever-imposing enduro freestyle environment, Canyon Country. When exploring this map for this video, I discovered a lot of little secrets that I never bothered to look that closely at before. The map takes place at a sandy and rocky canyon complex. The vegetation we have here are some evergreen trees here and there, as well as some small shrubs. But now, let's take a tour of some of the human attractions of Canyon Country. Our modes of transport include a railroad, hang gliders, and the ATV our rider is sitting on. We also have an archaeological site, an abandoned mine, and this village with pink, almost terracotta buildings. And we also have another developer-owned and operated implement, that is Sanderlin's Gas and Repair. Alan Sanderlin is the lead of the game programming team for ATV Offroad Fury. There are a lot of checkboxes that we need to hit to find the potential location of this track. My idea here is to start broad and narrow my search with the more specific side attractions and points of interest. So broadly, we need to select an ecoregion, which I found to be the Arizona-New Mexico Plateau to match the geography here. The next thing I did was try and find a rail map of Arizona and New Mexico. I needed somewhere that had rail running near the canyon systems of the southwestern United States. Conveniently, the map of rails that I was using for Arizona mentioned, via label, what the rail was being used for, which helped me find mine systems. I eventually narrowed down to an area along the BNSF Railway northeast of Holbrook, Arizona that had a railway, a mine, and some nearby heritage surrounded by the Painted Desert. That is where I placed this track, somewhere near the Painted Desert Indian Center. Our next map has probably some of the most unique geographic features. Crater Park is another desert environment that, along with the semi-rugged terrain, has these large, moon-like craters scattered across the landscape, which gives this area its name. No trees to see here, just some bushes and cacti, but we do have plenty of human-made structures to take a look at. The area seems to be a bit of a tourist attraction because we are greeted with the Crater Park Tourist Center, camping areas, as well as observation decks built specifically for viewing the craters. Remember to bring your portable radio as well, because we have the radio broadcast towers for the 104.4 WKMF radio station, Real Rock Radio, deep tunes deeper than the deepest crater. Beyond that, we also have the Crater Park Ranger Station, and a suspicious ghost town out in the distance. I knew deep down that it couldn't be, but curiosity got the better of me, and I had to look to see if there were impact craters as clustered up as they were in this map. And here's the problem. When an asteroid is as big enough to clear Earth's atmosphere and not get burned up before it hits the ground, it's usually big enough to make an impact as large as a small town or an entire state. I do not think that's what's going on in this map. After researching, I found myself back in the realm of volcanology. I think that the closest thing that these resemble in size and stature are cinder cones. It's a volcano that essentially spits out solid chunks in ash rather than a lava goop vomit. And one of the best places where a cluster of these happen in the United States is at the Potrillo Mountain Wilderness area near Afton, New Mexico, inside the American Chihuahuan Desert. The cinder cones here are maybe a bit too big in comparison, but they are pretty darn close to what we're looking at as far as they appear in Crater Park.
The concept of you reinvented in an alcoholic weed.
Fort Roberts tries its hardest to make itself pretty easy to place on a map. But there is a lot of trouble because, honestly, I'm just thinking way too hard about it. The elephant in the room here is that yes, we have permission as lowly ATV riders to ride freely on a likely US military base of some sort. We have military posts, an airstrip, hangars, and training grounds. All things that you would expect to find at a military base. And for those of you that are more aeronautic inclined than I am, could you check my notes here? I've identified these as being a green camo A-10 Warthog, a gray F-15 Eagle, and an AH-64 Apache. All of these I'm pretty sure are American military aircraft. Here's where I get a little confused and tripped up. There's very obviously nuclear power plant cooling towers in this map, and I'll explain why that is a problem in a second. But our physical geography here seems to actually be pretty flat-leaning for ATV Offroad Fury standards. Our trees here are mixed, but lean more evergreen than deciduous. Aside from that, our play area here is grassy and quite boggy. When locating this map, I definitely let the military base take the lead in leading me to a location over the natural geography, but I think I made both work, but you'll have to hear me out. We have to resolve a problem first. It's pretty easy to find a map of all American military bases, and it's also pretty easy to find a map of all American nuclear power plants. But after a while, I began to notice that these two human-made features almost never overlap with each other, which, if you step back for a moment and think about it, you wouldn't want to put a couple of your most valuable wartime assets right next to each other for easy pickings. Ideally, you'd like to spread these things far apart from each other. I found somewhere where they're kinda, sorta, not really close to each other. Tyndall Air Force Base in northern Florida is where I ended up placing this map. This is our only outdoor map that I found to possibly exist in the southeastern United States. Our final map of the outdoor chapter of this video is Yucatan Dunes. This is also one of the big ankle breaker maps, where the naming convention of the map totally misleads where this map would actually be located in North America. The map, like a few other in the Nationals maps, is set up with a lot of general racing features. The map has advertisement signs, canopy tents, and pole-mounted loudspeakers sprinkled around the circuit. The natural environment here is as the name would tell you, dunes, with a few wispy grasses around the area. No cactus or tree in sight here. The Yucatan, that most people know, does not look like this. In fact, the environment in the Yucatan Peninsula is actually well forested, green, and lush. I do not doubt that we are in Mexico. Mexico has its fair share of deserts and dunes all around the country, but I wanted to stay in the spirit of the Yucatan Peninsula, and instead place this map somewhere in the Baja Peninsula, which is actually where I believe this map may be modeled after. After scanning up and down the skinny peninsula, I finally landed on a very small town called Colonia Laguneros in the Baja California Sur state of Mexico. This area is surrounded by wide open dunes, which match the geography we have in the game for this area.
Down
Welcome to the Stadium Supercross maps. For all 7 of these maps, we're going to have to reach pretty far to make these work as something in real life. The chosen name for the stadium will be doing 90% of the heavy lifting, but I do try to incorporate elements about the stadium's architecture as much as I can into my selection. Keeping the same north to south ordering as we had before, our first map is Syracuse. The Syracuse track takes place inside what appears to be a baseball stadium, based on the diamond shape of the field and the very hastily built dugouts near where home plate should be. Doing some rough math, it appears that the seating would allow for about 30,000 spectators to watch, and it seems this event pulled pretty well. I guess ATV racing was way more popular than I realized. Or were they paying people to come out? The first Syracuse that I think of is Syracuse, located in upstate New York. And this city will probably give us our best shot at finding a larger size stadium for our ATV event. Syracuse's primary stadium is the JMA Wireless Dome, home to the Syracuse University Orange football team and other collegiate sports. The problem here is that it is domed and not used for baseball. Our best baseball option in Syracuse is NBT Stadium, which hosts the Syracuse Mets, the AAA minor league affiliate of the New York Mets. Our next Supercross track is Latrobe. This is another ginormous stadium, but built a little more like an American football stadium, except no large jumbotron in this stadium. I guess they really want the fans in the stands to focus on what's going on the field. Other than that, I took note that the seats here are colored green, purple, yellow, and green. And if the intention is to match whatever major league team plays in the stadium, the color scheme and logo has to be ugly. When Googled, Latrobe appears as a small city near the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania metro area, and I'm sorry to say there is no large stadium in the real Latrobe. Because of this, we will travel to nearby Pittsburgh to look for a stadium. I think we can finalize our decision on Pittsburgh's open-air stadium and home to the Steelers, Acrisure Stadium. Seats here are yellow, which is one of the 4 given colors that we have in Latrobe, and that's more than enough and about the only confirmation that we need here. Are you all prepared for some bad news? We have now landed in Wilkes-Barre, and I can't help but notice something peculiar. Whoever was the architect of the stadium used at Latrobe will have some beef with the architect who designed the stadium here at Wilkes-Barre. Only kidding. These stadiums are identical, except for the colors of the seats. Our color arrangement here is orange, yellow, red, and blue. The Wilkes-Barre that I'm familiar with is home to Title Fight, but I'm not sure what the major stadium setup is here. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot to use in this area. Notably, indoor stadiums are stadiums too small to be the in-game Wilkes-Barre Stadium. Not too far from here is Penn State University, which does have a ginormous stadium, but I wanted to use the unique opportunity to do something a little bit more strange. I wanted to have a throwback location, something that doesn't exist anymore that existed at a time of the game's development and release. And the perfect candidate for this is Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That stadium hosted both the Philadelphia Phillies and Eagles until about 2003, when they both moved to newer, separate stadiums. Up to this point, you have seen all 2.5 variants of the Supercross maps featured in ATV Offroad Fury. So now that we know that the maps on the Supercross end are recycled, let's check out the rest of our remaining maps. The only other use of the baseball map that we saw in Syracuse is used again in Chesapeake. Same stadium, same teal seats. The largest Chesapeake inside the United States is Chesapeake, Virginia, and while rather large, there is not too much in terms of stadiums. The metropolitan area that Chesapeake is a part of is Norfolk, and they surely have to have a baseball stadium that is comparable to the one we see in-game. Norfolk's largest baseball stadium is Harbor Park, home to the Norfolk Tides, which is the AAA minor league affiliate of the Baltimore Orioles. The icing on the cake is that the seats here are blue, just like they are in-game. Just don't cross-check me on the capacity. Tupelo's surrounding stadium is an exact copy of Wilkes-Barre, a screenless dome with orange, yellow, red, and blue seats. There are a few Tupelos around the United States, but most prominently is Tupelo, Mississippi, which itself does not have any major stadiums to place this track at. But if you take a short trip northwest on US Highway 278, you'll eventually land in Oxford, Mississippi. Oxford is home to Southeastern Conference powerhouse Ole Miss Rebels. The bowl at Vaught-Hemingway Stadium is a perfect representative for our location. Here is our last stop at our orange, yellow, red, and blue variant stadium that just cannot stop reappearing in the game. Menifee, like Tupelo and Wilkes-Barre, also has the same stadium arrangement and multicolored seats. This is another place name that I'm unfamiliar with, so in comes Google for the rescue. This leads us to one of the larger metropolitan areas in the entire world. Menifee is a city in the greater Los Angeles area, so I know that will mean there is a lot to choose from here. The Rose Bowl in Pasadena and the LA Memorial Coliseum are both pretty good options here. I'm choosing the latter just because it sits a little geographically closer to the real-life Menifee.
Money is fake, we made it up. You work your whole life, but it never be enough. Money is fake.
We have finally made it to our very last official track. And this one should be relatively simple. No difference in our stadium, but a change of seat color at our non-baseball stadium. Santa Fe would seem to imply Santa Fe, New Mexico, but let's take a look at what the live sport landscape looks like. Unfortunately, the largest stadium here seems to be a high school football stadium, but a pretty good looking one at that. All of New Mexico isn't that much better. University Stadium in Albuquerque is alright, but it's set up in the typical college football horseshoe fashion and isn't a complete bowl like I need for Santa Fe, the track. We need to expand our search, and I need to make a confession to you. I couldn't stand being in North America for all of these tracks. So where else do we have places named Santa Fe? I think I found our target area in South America, specifically Argentina. Santa Fe, Argentina is home to Stadium Brigadier General Estacio Lopez. This is more like it. A nice round bowl, and it conforms to the YouTube documentary twist at the end of the video trope that I needed to abide by.
Welcome to the training course. We're gonna teach you several techniques to help you get the most out of the game.
To remain in your privilege at any expense is your greatest gift. I will serve without question as a soldier to protect your unchecked expansion. You have it on it!
Let's check out some extracurriculars. The training course appears to be a cross between Lexington Trails and Somers Raceway. Just adverts, corner markers, and white paint sprayed all over the track surface. There are only deciduous trees around the course here. Otherwise, the track seems green, lush, and rolling, just like the 2 tracks that I mentioned earlier. Another problem is you cannot pull too far away from the track before it snaps you back for not focusing on your training homework. For our last environment, I'm making more of a me choice, something that is near my neck of the woods, because frankly, that sits somewhere in between the geographic positions of where I chose Lexington Trails and Somers Raceway to be. This area certainly doesn't seem to be super primed for agricultural use, so that turns my options to either the Mark Twain National Forest in Missouri or the Shawnee National Forest in Illinois. The more flat-leaning Shawnee is probably the better choice here, so I chose the small town of Buncombe, Illinois. I really could have picked anywhere in southern Illinois, but Buncombe is a funny name for a town.
Congratulations. Looks like you're ready for some off-road fury.
When you boot up the game and get past the developer splashes, the introduction video to the game with real-life footage of ATV racing and stunts plays. I was curious to find out where these came from, and if there was more. Off-roader Wes Miller, creator of H-Bomb Films, has a video series by the name of Huevos. This is like old Rodney Mullen skate films, except it's ATVs, and if you're ever wanting to watch more, he uploaded all of his content on YouTube for free. Or, if you're feeling a little extra fancy, you can go to his website and purchase the physical DVDs. The intro videos for ATV Offroad Fury are just cuts from his Huevo series. I'm reserving the end of the video for airing my grievances and concluding my findings. Here is something cool to note. There is no water in ATV Offroad Fury. Water was invented right before ATV Offroad Fury 2 came out. People in this time period just drank Mountain Dew Code Red. Because of the lack of water, I could never really use hydrology to help me locate where the tracks might be. My best methodology was to just assume that the desert maps had no water and the maps with greenery had water. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I was also thinking I could use the skybox to narrow down my search on some of the maps. But the skybox on all of the maps in the game is just mountainous. These had to have been prehistoric times, so the elements hadn't had time to naturally weather down the Earth's surface enough. As we all know, this happened in between ATV Offroad Fury and ATV Offroad Fury 2. I was hoping this would help me determine if a map tended to lean more flat or hilly or mountainous, but I just had to use the features of the playable map area. I have never given this game a proper full look, and I think it's cute that the art directors of the game would add so much off the beaten path to explore and decode, which I'm still doing for Kuntz's Hot Doggies. This was a satisfying first video of this kind to make. I never give myself a chance to just write, and I have a cheap video editing software that I bought a long time ago that I never use. I hope that whether you're eating, folding laundry, or pooping, which is my personal usual suspects for when I have these longer type YouTube videos on, that you enjoyed it, and that you'll let me know what you thought, especially if you have better locations than what I picked out. You shouldn't, because I have a geography degree, and that automatically qualifies me as being smarter and a goat at video games that nobody gives a shit about. I'd say subscribe for more, but I'm not a YouTuber. If I'm being true to myself, if you liked this video, go to a local hardcore show or something. That would mean a lot more to me.